Alright guys, TouchGamer here back again today. Hope you're all enjoying your Saturday so far. It may be early morning for many of you over in the USA. Today, Atlanta, of course, the home series begins. Very exciting stuff. We talked yesterday about the potential of Chicago versus Atlanta. Exactly what's going to go down in this coming weekend, we will have to see. Today, I wanted to talk about some other storylines to keep your eyes on as we prepare for this event. Like if you guys enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. And first of all, Rambo Ray. Those of you guys who have been around the scene for a long time will know this name very well indeed. Back in Black Ops 2 was a really prominent player, considered to be one of the smartest players to ever play the game, and arguably revolutionized the way the game was played and the way the game was thought about way back in the day. After he retired from professional play, back in Black Ops 2, he always used to use like the MP7 he used to use, came into meta towards the end, so he was always a real, visionary, I guess, about Call of Duty. Anyway, after he retired from playing, he then went to go and work for Sledgehammer Games on a few of their games, and he says today was my last day at Sledgehammer Games. The last 5.5 years over there have been amazing time and experience. I didn't quite know what to expect here since my previous job was to play the games at the highest level. So interesting to see, because the rumor, of course, around next year's Call of Duty, or I guess this year's Call of Duty, is that it's going to be Black Ops 5. It was initially going to be Sledgehammer's game, but apparently Activision went in and said, no, this isn't good enough. Treyarch, you're now going to work on the multiplayer for Black Ops 5, or whatever they're going to call it, some sort of Black Ops Treyarch title, and Sledgehammer are just going to have to go to the wayside. So maybe this does edge some credence to that. And Michael Contry, a name I'm sure many of you are familiar with, you were one of the good ones, Ray. Interesting to see what he thinks of his old organisation in Sledgehammer. I count myself fortunate to have worked with you. I'll always remember the supportive conversations with Hastro, working to get you into the studio and on your path as a developer. You made us all better. Best of luck on the next step. So some kind of wholesome stuff to start off the video. Then we have this as well from Clayster, who talked about this a couple of days ago about this error code named Platypus. Apparently this has been fixed and LAN lobbies work, or there's at least a workaround. Not necessarily has been completely fixed, but there is at least a workaround right now in the game so that we don't have to deal with this awful issue where LAN lobbies don't even work. Clayster kind of fires off here on the developers. Spawns MP5 12Hz error code, battled harder not working. This is the tweet he comes out with here, showing that what 12Hz looks like. You can basically see this bad boy moving across the screen here. Man, like, I do really realise how hard the devs work on this, and I do sympathise with them as they've poured blood, sweat and tears into it, but I just can't excuse all these problems. It's like we're playing a game made in 1995. I don't disagree, but at the same time, you have to deal with what's given. There's clearly teams right now which are the best in the game, even though there is randomness afoot for sure. Just before we go on to the storylines then, there's this from Spinner Spence. He's one of the guys that's been on MLG for a long time. Now he's the manager of player relations at the COD League. Pac-Man says, not to be a bother or anything, but does LAN even work yet? Of course, the coach for OpTic Gaming, apparently deleting 2 items in the application. Saved management fixes this. This is what I was told today, and Spinner Spence says it works. So clearly they've come up with some sort of workarounds. We should be seeing proper LAN play this weekend, because it was legitimately a concern that they might somehow have to play this weekend online or something at the event because of some of the issues that are inherent in the game right now. If there is indeed a workaround, that's a key storyline to keep your eyes on though as we go forward. Let's go into this then. So this is the schedule. Starting at 3 PM my time. That's 3 hours exactly for when this video is going live. So this video is going live in an ideal world at 7 PM or 7 AM even on the East Coast, 4 AM on the West Coast, and it's starting in 3 hours from when the video is going live. Minnesota Rocker, Paris Legion, Royal Ravens, Mutineers, Huntsman, Ultra, Atlanta FaZe, OpTic Gaming, LA. We talked about some of these predictions in yesterday's video, but this is how it's going. On Saturday, 8 PM my time is this featured match, and then after that, we go back to, matches that are yet to be determined. These are all the games today. So there's 8 matches today. This is my time, of course. It gets a little bit confusing in the UK because you go into Sunday, but in fact, these are technically Saturday's games. But the last game is going to start at 2 AM my time in the morning, which means it's going to start at 9 PM on the East Coast. So it'll finish at about 10:30. At my time, it'll finish at about 3:30. I don't think I'm going to be staying up to watch that one. But a lot of games here on the Saturday, 8 games in total. Then we go into the Sunday. We have the first game at 4 PM my time, which is 11 PM Eastern. You guys can work it out from yourselves from there. Then we've got the next match, and then we go into the finals, which finish my time at 10 PM, 10:30, hopefully in an ideal world. It doesn't get delayed too far beyond that, but 8 games on the Saturday today, 5 games tomorrow. That's how the weekend is shaping up. Hopefully it won't finish too late and won't overrun too much for the fans at the venue especially, which was really an issue here in London. So here we go. These are the participants. These are the 8 teams that are attending. FaZe, Huntsman, Mutineers, Ravens, Rocker, OpTic Gaming, LA Paris Legion, and the Toronto Ultra. Wanted to talk about some key storylines to go in here. We don't have the big storylines of maybe Clayster versus Simp and the old Simp and Abizi, the old E United squads. We don't really have even the Clayster versus Arsty's old E United squad stuff. And we don't even have Clayster versus Pristini or the United Squad stuff because Dallas Empire isn't attending. So we don't quite have the same storylines, and the New York Subliners have some storylines around them. And Surge, of course, having made this roster change, Enable's no longer in the team. This is Panda. These are all the rosters that were taken from the Minnesota event. And LAG, of course, apparently right now are scrimming with Blast instead of Aches. So something to keep your eyes on. But there are still some things that definitely are deserving of a mention. First of all, wanted to talk about Crowd, because this Atlanta FaZe team, when it first formed, I talked about it's an entire philosophy of how to play Call of Duty, which may have gone out the window on this team. Like, all these guys are pretty damn young, and they're playing in their first few years of professional Call of Duty. They're cracked, as it were, right? They play at a very, very high tempo, and they don't have a traditional, slower in-game leadership type of figure. Now, Modern Warfare might not play quite like a World War II style, slower boots on the ground game, where you can't really abuse movement so much, and it's more about positioning and teamwork. In that game, we saw that teams like Evil Geniuses with Aches on it and Assault and these kind of players towards the end of the game are actually like one of the best teams in the game, right? And teams that tended to play slower and more methodical tended to be better teams. However, in this game, to some degree, it's tactical, but I think there's also an element of really fast-paced, sliding around corners, and definitely that nature of the game takes precedence right now, and that's why we see some of these Atlanta FaZe players being absolute monsters, and guys like Simp and Enable, Enable and Aches, of course, having to drop back from their teams because they can't quite keep up with this pace. That's what we've really seen from Call of Duty over the last few years, and that's really a direction that Atlanta FaZe imagined this game would go in, and that's the direction they take. Now, the Crowder piece is really, really interesting, right? Because he was, of course, the coach on the 100 Thieves team last season alongside Priester, and had so much success over on that team. This team does not have a traditional IGL type player. I did talk about Simp as well yesterday to some degree, but most of these teams will have a player that's been there, done it before, especially championship contending teams. Now, you could argue Simp has been there and done it before. Won playoffs last season, won champs last season on that United squad, but he wasn't the leadership figure on that team. That was Clayster for sure. Nowadays, he's got no one behind him apart from Crowder as the coach. Is this a new mechanism for creating that kind of in-game leadership type calming presence by having the coach being that guy rather than in the game? Of course, you do need some of that influence within the game itself. If the game gets close, can you clutch up? These kind of things. But if you have a tough loss, Crowder can then get on the mic just after the match, start talking to the players, calm them down, get them focused for the search and destroy. Maybe that's the type of influence that a kind of IGL, I guess, type figure would normally do in a game. But now you can kind of have that guy as a coach. And Crowder, of course, phenomenal player, former world champion himself when he was known as Replays back in the Advanced Warfare days, alongside Clayster indeed, is now being that guy with this team that seems to be having that influence. Then you've got the coaching staff and the analysis staff behind Atlanta FaZe. You've got RJ, Easy Mac over there, and these guys doing some work behind the scenes as well. So this is a really interesting question. If they do win this weekend, do you really have to change the way you think about Call of Duty in terms of how you structure your teams? And probably LAG and maybe Seattle Surge are looking at that thinking, well, is Aches really required anymore, right? And that's a very good question. So we'll have to see how this weekend goes. Yeah, definitely something to keep your eyes on, in my opinion, for sure. Then we have some Royal Raven stuff. Just wanted to bring up Dylan and Jerd as key pieces for this team, because right now we can tell if you're going to keep up with Atlanta FaZe, either you have to slow them down to some degree, which is going to be very, very difficult, because not only are they playing incredibly fast pace, but they also rotate really, really early in terms of the hard points, or you just have to keep up with their pace. And Dylan and Jerd were incredibly fast players in the Black Ops 4 season. Dylan especially had his moments where he looked like the best player in the game, or a top 3 player. Some of the performances he was putting up were pretty mental. And Jerd, of course, over the last few years has been considered one of the best with the movement, the shoulder peeking, this kind of stuff. London Royal Ravens have some great pieces here in theory to be able to mix it up with the best teams in the game in terms of pacing. And Wuskin is a pretty fast-paced assault rifle, to be honest, in terms of, when you see him play right now. He plays at a pretty damn good pace. RevTheAR has been a bit of a slug, though, people say. So, you know, we'll have to see how the pacing of the team works out. But Dylan and Jed seem to be the key pieces, to me, for this team to work at a very, very high level. If these guys can start performing at 1, 1.05, 1.1 KD almost, this could be genuinely a championship contending squad, especially how well Wuskin is playing right now. And we know what, you know, potential Rated and Scraps have. We've seen that on the Red Reserve team back in the World War II days. So London's a team I definitely keep my eye on here. But these are guys that have to perform if this team wants to do well. Because if Dylan and Jerd aren't performing, you know that Abizi and Simp are going to have a pretty damn good tournament. So it's going to be pretty impossible to do much against that if they are. OpTic Gaming Los Angeles, another very big question mark this weekend. A couple of people pointing out in the comment section below that OGLA seem to have improved in scrims. That's not something that surprises me by any means. Apparently Jacob's actually been playing pretty damn well as well. But, you know, you've got Dashy, you've got Kenny, you've got Slashy, you've got TJ. This is a difficult team on paper to see how they could be beaten. When this team was first formed, I was like, you know, this might be on paper the strongest team in the entire game, at least top 3, I thought. Right now, of course, they're not playing anywhere near that level. Their first game is Atlanta FaZe. That's not going to be easy by any means. But if they can somehow get through that, or at least get through to the final 4, which is plausible, maybe they can switch something up. So we'll have to see, hoping for a big weekend from them here, or at least to show some decent potential, because this is a team that I would like to be competitive towards the end of the year to mix things up, because otherwise, you know, FaZe, Huntsman, Empire, I think will get better. You know, which other teams are really going to be super competitive for the World Championship at the end of the season? OGLA is a team that I would, you know, like to be one of those teams to mix it up, make things more exciting for us, because a few of these teams, you know, by the end of the year, I'm still not expecting them to be championship contenders unless they make significant changes. Another thing to mention here is the Paris Legion, of course. These guys, Denz and Kismet, have been playing out of their minds. Yes, they have Minnesota, the first game of this weekend's. That could be beatable. I did say yesterday I kind of favor Minnesota, but, you know, Paris should be favorites on what they've shown, and they have definitely beaten better teams than Minnesota have. There's no denying that. And if Denz and Kismet can continue to play as they have been, you know, I think Paris should, in theory, win that series, but that's the question mark, right? These guys have been on fire at London, and Minnesota as well. They played very well, so definitely some things to keep your eye on, because, you know, Wuskin was putting up performances on a London team, but Denz was not far behind on Paris by any means, and Kismet had his moments where he looked like one of the very best players in the entire game. And also, just to finish off then here, this is, of course, the key storyline. Atlanta versus the Huntsmen. Wonder where you guys fall on this down in the comment section below. Kind of a lot of people saying Huntsmen, but it really comes down, in my opinion, to that map 2 search and destroy and the kind of pace these guys can put up. As we said, the home crowd is going to be a huge influence here, hopefully, for Atlanta FaZe to keep things competitive. It depends. People saying, yeah, I titled yesterday's video, can Chicago upset Atlanta on home soil? Part of the reason I did that was because it sounds better as a title, framing it like that, than it does the other way round. But also, you know, it's a great question, right? In theory, Chicago are the more proven team, and Atlanta should be the one if they're, you know, battling uphill, I guess. And of course, the Huntsmen are always going to have a home crowd effectively wherever they go. Should be very exciting. Hopefully we get to see this matchup though, because it's by no means guaranteed. If Atlanta or if Huntsmen get upset anywhere along the line, like OGLA could be a banana peel early on for Atlanta FaZe, and if one of those teams loses and comes out second in their group, for example, then they will be playing each other earlier on, you know, potentially in the very first rounds, or it's, you know, that would be an option, which could mean we get an underwhelming grand final, which hopefully doesn't happen. I just wish we kind of would be able to get more than one series of these guys playing this weekend, but maximum we're only going to be one series, and there's all sorts of question marks that are going to be drawn. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new. As always, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.